This is Death or Prison, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. We bring you stories of hope and encouragement.
Hello, I'm Joe Pryor, President and CEO at Crossroads Prison Ministries. For over 40 years, we have provided correspondence Bible lessons and caring mentors to people in prisons and jails. I want to invite you to join us on this journey. You may ask, why should I sign up for a correspondence Bible study? Well, the answer is simple. Just as it is important to strengthen your body with good food and exercise, and your mind with new learning opportunities, it is also vital that you spend quality time growing your faith in God. Crossroads is a Christian program, but open to you. Whether you are a believer in Jesus Christ looking to strengthen your faith or simply exploring faith and what it can mean to your life, we're here for you. We want to come alongside you as we study God's Word together. We don't charge for our program. All you need to do is write to us at the address on the screen, and we will begin sending you lessons. I encourage you to give us a try. Thank you, and I hope to see you as a student very soon.
Hello and welcome to the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. I am Johnny Branham.
And I'm Raul Lopez.
And I am Ricky Carrion. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about a lot of Ricky Carrion's life, his 5-year sentence in prison, and what led him to that. We want to start off with where you're from and what was life like growing up as a young child.
Yeah, so born and raised in Florida, South Florida, my whole life. Hollywood, Florida. Was born in Hollywood Memorial Hospital. Ran around plantation for the first 10 years of my life. And up until that point, life was pretty good. Mom, dad, successful, moved here from the island. My dad took a risk and said, I'm going to go start a business. And so first generation born in the States and firstborn male, that all leads into kind of how this plays out. But
and what island was that?
Puerto Rico.
Okay.
Yes.
Island of Puerto Rico.
So shout out Fajardo. That is La Varal. That's where I would spend summers. And I, kind of grew up there too. It was non-negotiable speaking Spanish in my house. I grew up, that was my primary language. My dad was like, you'll learn English, when you go to school. He made me read the newspaper and stuff. So I had great upbringing up until that point. I would say that's kind of when things took a turn. But
okay. Growing up in South Florida, and what age, do you remember what age you were when you left Puerto Rico and got into South Florida?
Yeah, so I was born here. So I was born in Hollywood.
Oh, okay, you were born here.
Yeah, so I'm the first one out of both sides of my family born here. And so, yeah, from my earliest memories is being down in South Florida, the beaches, that whole vibe. So
hobbies growing up, sports, music.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So played a lot of sports. Really, I didn't really take to school, but you had to do good in school to play sports. Played nearly everything. Puerto Rican background, so baseball, boxing, basketball were the primary ones. Took to basketball. My dad was the coach for everything. And like I said, pretty early kind of life was really, I think, picture perfect. It was really cool.
Ricky, your relationship with your parents, because you just mentioned your dad was the coach in a lot of the sports and so on. How was your relationship with your father, with your mom?
Yeah, so it was everything. It was everything. Growing up in a Puerto Rican household, family is everything. And I really took to that. I always liked staying up later than I was supposed to, and hear the conversations that my aunts and uncles and my mom and dad were, and try to interact. And they taught me morals, they taught me values, they taught me faith. Walk into a room, you say hi, how are you, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was awesome. My relationship with my parents was everything. For those of you that know, right, every night it was bendición, Dios te bendiga. Every morning was the same thing. Yeah. You asked for a blessing. So very tight knit. And my father was a leader, man. My father was fearless. I looked at him. He was my superhero. He was a warrior. I really admired him. He would take me to the warehouse. So he had a big business selling basically hardware back before the .com boom. And my mom always says I get my salesman side from him. And I remember typing away on keyboards and stuff like so. Very tight knit. Me and my dad were very close, and me and my mom just as close, if not more close. I would say.
You know, Ricky, it's interesting because a large majority of the people who were doing time in prison,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't have a father, a very dysfunctional family. I can relate in the sense that I come from a good family. My parents were married for 48 years, but yet we ended up in prison.
Right.
So statisticians could give you a patterns of why this happens, but we have all kinds of people that do time, and there might be somebody looking out there who says, well, my father wasn't a drug addict or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
we all go through the same thing and we end up in the same place. And
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't for the Lord Jesus Christ, where would we be?
Amen. No, absolutely. I mean, I've had my share of hardships. I think for sure my dad, like, so he passed when I was 10, and that's kind of where the story goes
Ooh,
Okay.
south.
okay. You said 10 years
I
old.
was 10 years old, yeah. And so just for perspective, firstborn male, I was the oldest of 3 siblings, 2 younger sisters, growing up in a really good family, good moral compass, good values, good integrity. But then now, the patriarch's gone, right? The leader, the man's gone. We didn't really know what to do. He had businesses and left, my mom a widow. And it's great. My journey to faith, it really began with my mom. Funny enough, my father wasn't really the one that he was we dragged him to church. But I remember the night before my dad passed, I prayed that they take his pain away. He was misdiagnosed with leukemia. He actually had Evans syndrome, which is a very rare disease. And his lips were blowing up. They put him on medication because they thought his blood was thinning, but he most likely would still be here now. This is back in 2005.
Mhm.
As you can see, I have it, his date. I mean, it's the pivotal point in my life for sure. And I didn't know God would use it for good, but yeah, the night before I asked him, I said, God, if you have to, you can take him. And I woke up the next morning, he wasn't there.
Mhm.
And, people ask if God's real. And I was like, he heard me, and I resented him. I felt like it was my fault that maybe I should have prayed a different prayer, So after that, man, it's just feeling it was a void. It was a void for
Yeah.
sure when that happened.
I have to go back to the statement that you made at 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my mom when I was in my 40s, and it was very difficult for me as she struggled with cancer. But I had to make that same statement, but I was 40. You are 10, and you make the statement, Lord, if you have to take him, go ahead and take him. Your faith at that time, where did that come from? Where do you looking back, where do you think that came from?
I always knew that God had a plan for my life. It wasn't a Bible verse, it wasn't anything anybody said. I just felt like God was always watching over me and that I could communicate with him and he would listen to me. That might sound crazy, but
No,
that's
no.
really how how convicted I was, and um, where it came from. I mean, I have a grandmother who still prays for me till this day. I gotta believe that the power of prayer and just the environment that I was around, maybe, you know, who knows? But I thank God that my mom and my dad at least planted that seed
Yes.
because it stuck, it grew.
Digging a little bit deeper into how it was growing up, were
Mhm.
there any struggles or things that you can point to during your adolescence?
Yeah, so I mean, looking back now, I definitely think that I was a product of an over sexualized kind of environment. Growing up in a Spanish kind of upbringing, and this might not be everybody's story, but at least for me, like I talked about, the aunties always asking, "Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have this? Do you have that?" Um, when I was really young, I was like 6 or 7. I had older cousins that would take care of me. They showed me how to kiss. They showed me how to, you know, do things that a 6 or 7 year old shouldn't really be doing. My parents built businesses.
Mhm.
They were out.
Mm.
And I took that as a sign of pride because all the men in my life, other than my father, kind of were womanizers and they kind of glorified that lifestyle. And so that happened at 6 or 7. I watched pornography for the first time at 9 years old.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of messed up my perception of what it means to achieve as a man because I thought achievement as a man was being a player, being a womanizer from the age of 6, 7 years old.
Mhm.
Right. So then I lose my father. Um, I then just leaned into like, okay, debauchery, if that makes sense, where you talk about the void. What I filled it with was women, drugs, and when you don't have your father, you look to the streets and you see guys with cars, clothes, money, women, and those became my examples at that time.
When you say drugs, how young were you, and then what type of drugs did you find yourself
Yeah,
falling into?
so the worst drug has been sex and pornography.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is been it's you know I my dad passed at 10. I lost my virginity at 12. I went to Puerto Rico. My cousins asked me why I was still a virgin and
Mhm.
set me up with a prostitute. That's how I lost my
At
virginity
12
at
years
12
old.
years old in old San Juan with like a
Yeah.
40-year-old. I've
Wow.
never really shared that.
Hmm.
But looking back, that I just was numb to everything, and I just wanted approval from men. So I was like, okay, that's going to get me the approval of my older cousin who's 24, 25. Cool. Let me lose my virginity. Let me get girl. Like that became my life.
I'm glad you brought up that point, and we won't stay on it too long, but I needed to make the point that pornography is something that's really affecting the body of Christ. It's amazing how many leaders, pastors, evangelists, teachers of the word, who are actually, and it is an addiction. You're not putting a needle in your arm, but it is an addiction. I've been freed from pornography now for years. And I don't speak a lot about that because it's sort of like a topic that's taboo.
Mm-hmm.
People really don't want to talk about it a lot, but it's real. There are people watching now from the institutions that have a problem with the masturbation. And
Mm-hmm.
and listen, we're grown men. We're not here to tell fantasies and stories. This is the reality of what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, and there's a lot of programs and things that you can do, accountability partners, this or that. But finally, I was tired and I said, God, you need to help me.
Yeah.
And what it came down to was we cannot do it on our own.
Mm-hmm.
Willpower, just like a crack addiction,
Mm-hmm.
which I also did,
Mm-hmm.
but I couldn't handle it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad you brought that up because it's something that's not talked about a lot. But a lot of people in the body of Christ, we're not even talking about in the world,
Mm-hmm.
people who are serving God go through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely plaguing the young men specifically who is, I'm 31 years old. I'm raising two boys in this world and
How old are your boys?
4 and 2.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's something that kind of led me into prison actually. So I don't know if we want to get to that, but
We
but yeah,
do.
that's what I filled the void with. It was women, drugs, party, just becoming the biggest like party animal. Like that's how I thought, I would achieve like
We do want to get to that because
yeah.
there's this segue where you talk about that as addiction, which I think is a very powerful word and it's a very appropriate word. But like Raul said, it's something that most people don't use,
Right.
and I think of it as a lack of self control, which leads to other things.
Yeah.
Walk us through the time period leading up to you getting into trouble, and what are some of the things that
Man,
kind of
I'm professional
circumstances?
at getting into trouble. So I've been getting into trouble since forever. I just use my dad passing away as an excuse to get away with it. I leaned into the victim mindset. And for people who might be listening to this, like you might have to get to your lowest point to just release your victim mindset and just say, you know what? Like it's time to change. That's what had to happen to me. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, sixth grade, I got kicked out of sixth grade, went to boot camp in Arizona. I went to Florida Air Academy in Melbourne in seventh grade. Imagine my mom's single, 3 kids, working 3 jobs, putting me through private school. And
Mm.
I was like, F the world. I'm burning it down. And so leading up to that, man, it was like I went to private school, and essentially I met, funny enough, at youth my so when my dad passed away, we moved from Plantation, this huge house that he built with his own hands, into an apartment in Coral Springs. The reason being, my mom or my aunt told my mom she thought it'd be a good idea to get around to church. And so we grew up Catholic, so she was like, let me get, around community. And so we did. And I started going to the youth group. And the youth group I'm in Coral Springs, Florida, for those of you who are familiar. It's a suburb, but there's 1/10. There's certain areas and people know about them. And it's
That's
very
right.
close to this church where I went was 1/10. And so a lot of people, there was like a neighborhood, we'd throw up 110 and all this stuff. But I met all these influences, funny enough, in my youth group that were bad for me. They were all older. I was like 14, 15 when I met them. They were 25, 26. They taught me how to do drugs, hit licks, like rob people, but I wasn't. So what I would do is I had the private school girls and the private school money, because I went to the private school, St. Thomas, and played basketball.
Mhm.
And I'm not proud of it, but I mean, we'd set people up. And so I was kind of this
And you
When
met
you
these guys
undercover.
in the youth group.
I met them in youth group, and I was like, they used me, right? They used me. I was this undercover hood kid in this private school. So I was a suburb at school. I was what's that? A suburb kid when I went to school, but outside of school, I was like, going into houses, doing fraud, buying drugs with fake money. I mean, all types of schemes. So when did I start getting in trouble? I mean, it was almost immediately, like,
At 17, life hit a turn. You talked about some crimes that you were committing. Walk us through that period of where it led you to incarceration.
yeah. So, I mean, looking back, I'm glad that the charges were what they were, because, and people in the inside are going to see this. Maybe some of you guys did time with me, whether it was at DeSoto or Everglades or wherever. And my story. I always kept it real, but everyone would make fun of me. Like, you went to prison for the dumbest thing, Carrion. That's what they said. But yeah, so leading up to when I was 17, like I said, we'd always hit like licks and we'd scheme, and always looking for fast, easy money, because we all like drugs, party scene, and that's just what we knew. So we had business skills, just not applied to the
Mhm.
legal world. So my latest scheme at 17 years old, I was like, man, I'm kind of tired of like running into houses and, sticking people up for their drugs. Eventually you start to see friends disappear, and you go, hey, maybe I shouldn't hang around Deep Side and all these different neighborhoods. Like, I'm a good kid.
Yeah.
So my thought wasn't, oh, let me go be a good person, go get a job. It was like, well, let me just do more white collar type of crimes, right? Like more schemes and try and get more nefarious. So, which is terrible. But yeah, man, at 17, I remember like it was yesterday. I was on a bender, just like, and for me, it was alcohol and marijuana. It wasn't super complicated, but like I would smoke all the time, and I'd be drunk half the day too. Um, and it was just one of those nights where we were like, man, we need to cop, and we don't have money to do so. Let's come up with something. And yeah, I remember calling up my buddy. I won't name names, but I was like, hey man, I think I have an idea. And he's like, yeah, let's hear it. I said, well, hey, I have all these girls that send me photos, and they like me and this and that. And you got to remember, 2013, I'm graduating class 2013. 2009, 2008, 2009 iPhone came out. So I was the first high school class with like social media. Instagram became popular around 2010, 2011.
Mhm.
So it was very common for kids without cars in high school to FaceTime, and girls would send you flicks.
That's
That's what
right.
we'd call them, whatever. And so when I was 15, 16, that was like very popular. But then of course I got a car, and I was like, all right, no need to do that. I'll just drive to the girl's house or whatever.
Mhm.
But I never deleted the photos. So you guys see where this is going, maybe. So one day I'm sitting in my room, and I go, man, I wonder if I still have those photos of those girls. They're all rich because they go to St. Thomas. I'm going to threaten to put these online. I'm not going to do it, but maybe they'll just sell me $200-300. We could pull up the report. I don't know if it was like $200-300. So I call my friends and I go, is this a good idea? And they're like, of course it's a great, right? So I go and take the phone out, and for any of you getting out, this could be the worst enemy of your life, because my mom always told me, what you say, the wind takes, in Spanish, she would say,
Right.
but what you write is there for life.
Mm.
And growing
That's
up
right.
as a kid, you know, you don't know that this is going to be with you for the rest of your life. Everything that you put in this device, whether you think you deleted it or not, they
It's
have
there.
access to it. So, anyways, I text these girls, go with the scheme, give me $300, the whole thing. So, unfortunately, one of the girls' fathers was Coral Springs Police Department.
Hmm.
And so I am working Anthony's Coal Fired Pizza, working as a busboy off Westview University in Coral Springs. And
Know
there's
the
cops
area.
looking for me. And they asked for me. And I used to trap out of the back of that Anthony's Coal Fired Pizza. So I'm
And,
thinking maybe
and when you say trap for the
I
audience,
used to sell weed out the back, little dime
okay,
bags and stuff, like nothing crazy.
okay,
Just for like my high school friends that were in private school, you know, if they needed whatever. So I'm thinking maybe someone got caught up and, you know, snitched on me or something. So I remember like it's yesterday, I asked the pizza guy, I was like, what do you think I should do? And I told him like, this is what I did. And like, I threatened these girls. I didn't go through with it. I'm not gonna go through with it. I was just trying to get some money, whatever. He's like,
Mhm.
bro, you better get out the back. And I was like, no, I think they'll be cool if I just tell them, you know, I'm young. I'll just tell them everything, you know?
Yeah.
So I get out there and I tell them, hey, you know, we're just kids, man. These girls are obsessed with me. You know, she cheated. I made this whole story. I was like, she cheated on me and I got mad at her. And that's why I concocted this whole scheme. But as you can see, I haven't done anything and I don't plan to. They put me in handcuffs and took me away.
Mm.
So that's when I was like, whoa, this just got real. Like, out of all of the things that I could possibly be in the back of a cop car for, it's this, you
Mm.
know,
And what was the initial charge? What was the charge?
extortion.
Extortion. Yeah,
So
well, you were blackmailing,
I
of
was
course.
blackmailing
Yeah.
them. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you go through with it or not. I came to find out, you
Hmm.
know. So I sat in jail for, I want to say 2-3 days. Um my mom's, you know, the first number I dial, she doesn't have enough money. She doesn't know how bail works. Everybody in there is telling me 10%, 10%. My mom's hearing you got to post the full amount. Confusion.
Mm.
So she ended up borrowing money from a friend and posted the whole amount. It was a second-degree felony. I think it was like 30 grand. Because
Wow.
apparently when you put 10%, they take that.
Right.
But if you
Mm.
put the full amount, they'll give the whole thing back.
Mm.
So that's what she did. I got out and I got charged with extortion. And I remember just I just couldn't believe it, man. I was like in a state of shock, to be honest with you. And I kind of thought like, man, this will blow over. Like clearly they know we're just a bunch of kids. These girls sent me these photos. We were all the same age, you know.
Yes.
But then the worst thing happened. Um, I got ad charged, right? So I got out and I turned 18 and then they ad charged me as an adult.
You had mentioned the extortion with these girls, but you mentioned something when we were talking before about how you saw women as objects. Could you
Mhm.
elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I mean, when you're kind of over sexualized as I was from a very young age, you kind of start to get numb to sex. You get more, especially with pornography, it's very easy to get more more distorted views of sex because of kind of what the algorithm, there is an algorithm to the porn websites, just like there is to social media, to make you more addicted and to release more dopamine. And it gives the porn becomes more and more intense, if that makes sense. Plus having real sex and doing all the womenizing that I was doing, and the guys that I was hanging around, we didn't really look at women as, we looked at them as less than, I'll just be honest. We were very machismo, like, you know, that
Hmm.
kind of lifestyle. So it kind of led me into thinking this was even a good idea. Like for someone to think that this is a human being that obviously isn't looking at
Right.
the sanctity of another person. You know, this is God's daughter. I would have blew my kneecaps out. So
Mm.
if you're watching this and you're that dad, thank you, because what I did was wrong. You know what I'm saying? But looking back,
Right.
I know for a fact it was having access to the internet, right? And having a cell phone.
Yeah. Believe
A,
it or
ye-
not.
a year later, after you've doing this time in the county jail,
Mm-hmm.
you get to this point to where you're being sentenced. What are you being sentenced to? And how was that? How did that game roll back in your mind?
Yeah. So yeah, I got used to jail. Is that
Mm,
it's crazy, but I got used to it to the point where I would ask other people, this is my case. How do you think I can fight it? Fast forward a year later,
mm,
I looked up all the cases. Mine was the only case where the women were consensual in the fact that they had sent me these, but the sexting thing in this time period was a big problem in 2013.
mm,
But I was cooked, man. Everything was in writing. Like I was going to do time. So that year was me just basically preparing to go to YO. For those of you that know YO, it's Youthful
mhm.
Offender Camp, and they don't give a crap about anything. So you have to learn how to fight and all that sort of stuff. So my first year, after I knew that I was like not going to win this, I was just like, let me get the best plea and let me work out and stuff.
Mhm.
So the day came finally. It was about a year in, and I got a call from my lawyer, and we did a visitation, and he's like, "Hey, man, I got two options for you. One option was, hey, like you can get probation right now, you get out." And I said, "Cool. What's the charges?" He goes, "Well, extortion, child pornography. You're gonna have to register as a child predator for the rest of your life." And I said, "Great, sign me up. I'm ready to get out of here. I don't care. I'm 19 years old at this point. I'm like,
Yes.
get me out of here."
Mm,
And then he said, "Well, there's another option." I said, "Well, what's that?" And he said, "Well, you can do 60 months in prison, and then we could do 5 years probation, but they'll drop the sex charges because the victims were like, yeah,
Consensually.
we sent this to him, right?" Like, so I called my mom, and I remember just saying, "Mommy, these are my two options." I said, "Not listening to you put me in this position. What should I do?" And she said, "Mijo, you're gonna have to go." And I'm a good kid, man. I got a good heart. I just chose the wrong path. And so at that point it was like, all right, time to live with the consequences. So I signed that plea deal, and that started my journey, of now moving from county jail and going to prison and doing time. So
And you decided the route of taking the 60 months,
so I took the time,
because if
and
not, you would have had the sex charges for the rest of your life.
so my mom
Wise
said,
choice.
my mom literally said,
yes.
I was like, "Mom, like I can get out right now." And she goes, "People will believe your story at 19, but they won't believe your story at 63.
We've been listening to a very interesting testimony, powerful story of Ricky Carrion and what led him up to a 60-month prison sentence. We'll be continuing on episode 2, so definitely keep tuned in. This has been the Death or Prison podcast, brought to you by leanonmeusa.org. Now, we say this is a Death or Prison podcast, but we say choose life.
That's the Father's call through our stories. Oh.